Well, hello. This is Mick Smith, the Doctor of Digital, otherwise known online as, and I have the Facebook group, which is the Idea to Author Coach. And what I want to do is have my special guest today, Debbie Griffiths, and she's a best-selling author. And I really want to delve into some of her background and some of the things that she was thinking about, how she got started writing, what she has done, and of course, what she is doing now, because she's doing all kinds of exciting things and really interesting things. So, with that, I want to welcome my special guest, and that's Debbie. How are you today, Debbie?
I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And if I
Great.
complain, no one's listening anyway, so I'm not going to complain. So I wanted to turn the clock back a little bit because we had been chatting at one time and I had come out with Burning America, and that was in the best interest of the children. But we had also talked about that time, and I'd like to kind of turn the clock back from your perspective and how you got started in writing, because everybody wants to know why and how you started.
That's a great question because it was never on my bucket list to do. So one day we were having lunch and you brought up the fact that you were getting ready to publish your book and you started telling me a little bit about your story. And there are some aspects of your story that is very similar to mine. And after lunch and I'm on my way home, and for the next few days, it kept resonating in my mind is like, well, he wrote about that, and I've got all of this stuff. Is there, do I have a story? And would anybody care about it?
Mm.
And then I reached back out to you, got the name of your publisher, Motivation Champs, and contacted Dom and had a great conversation with him.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? Write a couple of chapters and submit it to me. Well, I did. And almost immediately he came back and said, write your story. And I was blown away by that because here's a publisher saying, I've got a good story to tell.
Yeah.
And and so I was, honored, and so I started writing and went through that whole process of writing the book and submitting it to him and going through the publishing process of work, choosing your cover and getting the book formatted and getting it edited and all that good stuff. It was kind of a fun process to,
Okay.
to see and be a part of. But yeah, I just never thought I had a story in me, much less anybody would want to read it. And like I said earlier, it was never on my bucket list to do.
So, having read your book and enjoyed it, I do know you do have a story. So, I'm curious if you could tell us what's the title of this first book and tell us a little bit about the story.
Sure. The title is Torched, Burnt by a Gaslighter. And it's really a fictional tale based on true events. Those true events are what happened to me. Uh, Basically, a victim or survivor of domestic abuse, primarily gaslighting. And I fictionalized it because I was still protecting some people that are still alive.
Sure.
And and it was also a way for me to distance myself a little bit.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure because this happened 25 years prior. So it really took me 25 years to open up and tell my story.
Okay.
So I really wanted to see, is there anything in the past that's still triggering me that I still need to work on? And by the time I got to the end and literally typed the end, I sat back and was like, wow, look how far I've come. I didn't realize it. And writing it, helped me realize how far I've come. And none of the past triggered me. Yeah, I could actually finally put it in its proper perspective and had a better understanding of how I became a victim of this.
So, a couple of questions come to mind, and I went through this process myself. It's the combination between fact and fiction. And of course, there's a caveat at the beginning because I wrote fiction, said any resemblance to those living or dead is mere coincidence. But clearly, some of it is based on real people and real things that actually happen. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about this whole idea of how do you balance fact and fiction, and how did you go about telling such a compelling story?
The first thing I did was create an outline. And it was really a timeline of my life, but basically an outline of what I wanted to say. And I needed to explain my upbringing, my school years, so that people had an understanding that this I was blindsided by this whole thing. And I added some additional characters who are totally false. They're made up, but as a way to help tell the story and show the events. And again, there were some events that happened to the one lady, Liz, and so I don't. They didn't happen to me, thank goodness, but it helped propel a conversation with her,
Okay.
where I outlined what had happened to me.
And this is, of course, a very touchy and sensitive area, but if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what actually happened to you. And what people should know is that you're an activist for domestic abuse. So could you talk a little bit about that in your personal experience?
Sure. Like I said, I was a victim of gaslighting. It was primarily gaslighting. There was a couple of incidents of physical abuse, but primarily gaslighting. And it's over a course of period of years that this happened, 17 and a half years. And gaslighting really is a physical, or a psychological manipulation where the perpetrator continues to twist things and isolate the victim into to the point where you don't even know who you are anymore. And it got so bad for me that I did attempt suicide. And when I woke up in the psych ward, the doctor said, "Your environment is making you sick." And
Mhm.
I knew, that I knew what he was talking about, because I had gone in maybe a couple months prior because I was not happy and I didn't know why. So I had started um, opening up to him about what was going on. And through that process, became depressed, very depressed, to the point of a suicide attempt. And so once he came in the room and told me that, I knew I needed to make changes. And once I made the change to leave the marriage and with two of the three kids and start to rebuild my life, it was only through then that I slowly had to rebuild my own self-esteem, my own self-worth, into figuring out who I was, and also had to figure out, how did this happen? What part did I play to that I became a victim? Because I don't want this to happen again. It's that old phrase, first time shame on you, second time shame on me, and I try not to do the second times, right? So I really needed to get into some therapy and figure out what was going on with what happened, what part did I play, what did I miss,
Mm.
and how can I prevent this to me? And again, because I don't want this to happen to me. And I think it was that goal that helped propel me to open up and write my story, because I was 19 when I got married. So I was in it for, I was raised Catholic. So the divorce word was never in the vocabulary. It was for till death to you part. And so I didn't see this coming. And, so many other young people, they say 1 in 3 teenagers will be a victim of some type of abuse, not necessarily physical abuse, by the time they're in their 20s, which is pretty staggering
Sure.
statistic. So we've got to get the word out to younger people, and even those that are could possibly be in these relationships. Is there's hope. There's a better life out there, and if I can rebuild my life, so can you.
And one of the things I'm curious about, because I appreciate you being so upfront, because I know this is really touchy subject for you and emotionally engaging and emotionally harmful in some ways. But one of the things that people should always be aware of, and then probably not, is that if there's physical abuse, usually a woman, sometimes a man, but a woman says, okay, that's clear. But I think what you're describing is this psychological game that's being played. And there are some things like continuous sickness or a feeling of something is wrong. And that's particularly pernicious because in gaslighting, how does a person know? Because their very framework of thinking is distorted. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about like some red flags or some signs to be aware of. How do you recognize abuse? In other words, if it's not blatant abuse.
Yeah, the gaslighting. A lot of times what the perpetrator will do is called love bombing. And, 1 minute they're showering you with gifts, showering you with compliments, and that can go on for a while. And then all of a sudden, one day something snaps, they blow up. There's this, huge thing, and you're left wondering, what did I do? And then he gets back on that cycle again of the love bombing where everything is great, and then boom, and you get to the point of feeling like you're walking on eggshells. That's one sign. Another one, and this happened to me, was isolation. You get isolated from family, from friends. You're told, oh, I wouldn't talk to that neighbor. I don't like blah, 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 blah. So they start putting things into your head about why you shouldn't do things. In my case, I was also told that I shouldn't work outside the house because he wasn't going to help take care of the house, the yard, washing the car, cooking, cleaning, and that I better have his shirts pressed and ironed for him at all times. So it's these little things, these little pressures that they, put on you to make you think you don't know, or that you're becoming forgetful. And it's like, I don't remember saying things like that. Or, they twist the truth. If you could say the sky is blue, they could come back and say, well, no, it's not. And then you're questioning, you're looking at the blue skies like, well, what am I not seeing? Causes a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. And again, the love bombing is what throws it into the mix, and why it takes so long to kind of really recognize that something's going on, because 1 minute or for a period of time, things can be really good. And then all of a sudden, boom. And then you're left like holding the bag, and it's hard to kind of come back from that, wondering, what did I do? And they put the blame on you. You should have done this. They can be very controlling, tell you what to wear, what not to wear, who to talk to, who not to talk to, what to say, what not to say. Those are some of the signs.
So this aspect of it is isolation, to say keep you away from people, or especially a person who is saying, well, Debbie, I think maybe your situation is not normal. And then the perpetrator said, well, don't talk to that person anymore because they're going to make you aware of what is normal and is not normal. But I mean, here's a question that people would ask too. Isn't it common though, excuse me, that couples disagree and there are some things that you're going to deal with in any relationship? So isn't it just normal to have times of being close and times of not being close? How do you distinguish between what is normal and not normal?
That's a great question. And you're right. There, in healthy relationships, there's, I think, more of a give and take. There's a respect between both parties, the husband and the wife. And in this case, it's not. It's always about the one person. It's a control thing. And I would say, and I go back to something that happened when I was dating him that I probably should have picked up on, but I was too young and too naive to know any difference. We had arranged to meet in the parking lot before our class. We met in our freshman year of college. he would always come into my car. We would listen to music or talk a little bit, 10, 15 minutes before we had to leave for class. Well, one day he's in the car, his car, and I'm in mine, pull up, and he wouldn't get out. He didn't get out of the car, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't nothing. And I thought, well, this is weird. And so it was time to get ready to get out of our cars to go to class. He gets out, and I say, good morning, and nothing. I got the dead silent treatment, and I'm thinking, what did I do? And so it was like that almost all day until he finally just said, you don't know what's wrong. And I went, no, I don't know what's wrong. Well, how come I always have to go and sit in your car? You never come out and sit in my car. And I said, well, I didn't know that was an issue for you. You never said anything. And then he kind of blew up again. And then I found myself apologizing. And I did that my whole life and my whole marriage. I kept apologizing for something that triggered him, that it was innocent enough. It's like, if I can't fix something that I don't know about or try to work towards things. So I think in healthy relationships, you have conversations and there's the respect. But when you're dealing with, in this case, a narcissist, it's about control. It's all about them. They have no empathy. They're not able to provide that empathetic sense to that other person of their feelings and their wants and their desires, and try to work at it together as a couple, not just one-sided.
And so in this, you're taking responsibility for the other person's emotions. So if the person is angry, well, that's your fault, and you have to take care of that emotional anger expressed by the other person. Whereas in a normal relationship, well, no, everybody's responsible for their own behavior and their own emotions and their own, person. It's not my responsibility. If you're angry, you're angry. That's not me. But I think you're placed in the position where you always have to cater. And I think that's what you're addressing. You're always
Right.
catering to their emotions, and sometimes
Right.
they're close, sometimes they're distant, and sometimes you're expected to read their mind and know what they want.
Right. So it got to a point, I'm always walking on eggshells because I don't know if I say something that would have been okay to say a week ago, is he going to blow up at me? So, and that's how it eventually erodes your self-esteem. You really question, is like, well, what am I doing wrong? What is it? What's going on? And fortunately for me, I was able to start getting into therapy. And after my first session, after I spent 45 minutes just pouring things off my chest, I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. And he said, there's nothing wrong with you. And that just blew me away. And so that was started the beginning of the end, was, when I had to start unraveling 17 and a half years of stuff that I basically, I liken it to a roll top desk, with the pigeonholes.
Right.
I had stuffed 17 and a half years of emotions and feelings and issues into that roll top desk, and there was no more room.
And
I
one
was
of
at a breaking point.
And one of these things you could say from the person who is being victimized, we put so much time and effort in. It's 17 years, it's a number of years. So shouldn't I stay committed because it's been so long? Or how do you get out? I guess is what I'm also driving at. So you have to say to yourself, okay, there has been this, it's been rocky, but that doesn't mean I have to remain where I am, because this is unhealthy and this is not helping me grow. So you just talk a little bit about then, well, how do you get out if you recognize the signs, isolation and taking care of my emotional needs, and because I'm not mature enough to do it myself, how do you get out?
It was difficult, to say the least. In my case, I had a conversation with him. This was after I had the suicide attempt, and said, this isn't working. And so he he wanted to try some more couples therapy and stuff for a while. It just it just it just wasn't working. No matter what he did, it was not what I needed or wanted. And he didn't. Again, it's about listening and the empathy. And so I made that decision. Now, I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, part of in the middle of part of the move out, I actually left the house. Um, he changed the locks, and so some I didn't get all of the stuff that I needed to get out of there. And I thought, okay, all right. And the police were no help, at all. And then through the course of that, there was, experienced some parental alienation, continual bad mouthing uh, of me, to the kids, things of that nature. But everybody's situation is going to be different, especially if there's physical abuse going on, because they say it takes a woman 7 times of attempting to leave before they're actually successful.
Wow.
And because there's these games you're getting played, like, you're not going to be able to make it, or you're afraid, how am I going to take care of the kids, or they start threatening that they're going to take the kids away from you. There's all kinds of mind games and stuff that get played. So it does take on average 7 times for a woman to leave. Now, those that are in a physical abusive relationship, it's a little more tricky with them. The highest murder rate happens to be when a woman is leaving a physically abusive husband. So for women going through that, they can get help through the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE.
Say it again.
1-800-799-SAFE. That's SAFE. They can help you put a plan together where you don't really tell anybody what your plan is, so that you can leave safely.
Well, along those lines, and this is part of the isolation, were there people that around you who said, your friends, family, and other people who say and suggest things to you like, I think there's something wrong here? And did you or think to yourself that, oh, maybe they're just overreacting, that, I'm in this committed relationship and things are fine. I can still go through it and I'm going to survive. Okay.
That's a great question, because in my situation, the isolation was to the point where I was literally 3,000 miles. I was living in Georgia and my family was in California. I'm a native Californian. And so the only contact I could have was on a weekly basis, where I could call them. This was the day when the rates for long distance calls was cheaper after 7 p.m.
Right.
So I would call after 7 p.m. and I was very, tight-lipped about what I could say or ask, or what I could be asked, or change the conversations. And like I said earlier, I was getting to the point where I was really unhappy and I didn't know why. One day I picked up the phone and called my mother during the day, the higher rate things. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm not happy, but I don't know why.
Hmm.
And she said, I have been praying for this call for
Wow.
years.
Wow.
And I was blown away by that. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, we've always gotten the feeling that he was very controlling, but we couldn't put our finger on it. They didn't see, whenever there was any interaction, family interaction, they didn't see anything, but they just felt like they just had that feeling. And so, again, started opening up, and that's about that same time I started going into therapy to figure out what was going on.
So sometimes just the gut feeling of those around you are saying, I feel there's something wrong. And that's it's a great indication that yes, in fact, there is something wrong, but you've got to see it from the outside, and that's the isolation part. Well, if the person is keeping you isolated, well, then you don't have access to other information, other people, other perspectives, which in a normal, healthy life, that's what we expect. You come and go as you please, you do what you want, and things of that nature.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's hard, when this is the holiday season and the incidences of abuse go up during the holiday season.
Sure.
There's the financial stress of the holidays. It could be, whatever pressures that people are under. So there's an increased chance. And, you ask other people to be on the lookout for that. And it's tricky, because the victim has to also be open to hearing it.
Yeah. So that I was going to touch on that as well. The holiday time is usually a heightened time of emotions because it's a holiday. So there's more control, there's more supervision, there's more restriction, and keeping the victim away from others' influences is really important. And this is often the case. So during the holidays, these abuse cases go up, and it's a high conflict time because it's an emotional time and all emotions come out. You can't control your emotions. It's about
Right.
just about
Right.
everything. So more joy, but more unhappiness at the same time.
Yeah. And you never know. You may be going to attending a holiday party, and if you see a woman that stays very close to her husband or her partner, much so that the woman is not really mingling with others, it's just they're always there with their partner, that may be a red flag. That may be an indication that she's being controlled, that there's some type of control there. You just never know if someone's always asking permission to do this, to do that. That may be a red flag. That person is experiencing some type of abuse. It's again, it's so subtle, and we can miss these flags. And you talk about the book, and I remember the publisher, saying, are you ready to publish this? And I had to take a step back for a second, swallow hard, and I said yes, because I was afraid. I was like, what are people going to say? What are people going to think about me? Why would she stay that long in a relationship? What's wrong with her? I had all of these thoughts
Yeah.
going through my mind. And when I said yes, it was very liberating. I had more people, as I was promoting the book, I had a lot of people come up to me and say, thank you for telling your story. Thank you for opening up and talking about it. Because guess what? It happened to me.
Yeah. And this is, I think, one of those unfortunate, reluctant parts that when a person, usually a woman, sometimes a man, says, I'm going to now make a decision, for some reason, it's almost like there's a prejudice against that person. Like, well, instead of encouraging, there's also discouragement. And people will say, stay in the relationship and stick with it. And they kind of minimize the difficulty that you're experiencing.
Yeah, you can. And I think if someone comes to you and is talking about some of their red flags, and they see it as red flags, just listen. Just listen to them. I don't know, I would give that kind of advice to somebody. I would just say, why don't you go see a therapist, a professional in that, to guide you, because these are major decisions that, asking for a divorce, just like getting married, is a major life decision.
Sure.
And when you have kids involved, that's even tougher. And I know I wrestled with all of that. It's like, do I stay? What about the kids? How are they going to be impacted? Those are all normal, valid questions to ask yourself. But I realized, when in that psych room, that of what I wanted to show to my kids, I wanted them to show that they had a strong mother. I wanted the abuse to end with me. I did not want them to become victims of abuse. nor did I want them to victimize others.
And along those lines, since the children are involved, could you talk a little bit about how that has impacted your children? And because there was abuse, what sort of impact did it have, and how is that kind of carried out or played out?
I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They're all flown the coop. Um, my oldest one was 14 at the time of the divorce. The state law said that he could choose which parent he could live with. So he chose his dad, which I was not surprised because he was his dad's favorite child. Um, the other 2 came with me, and I stayed in Georgia only because I was trying to still have some contact with my oldest one, and I
Mhm.
was really trying my best to see if if the kid's dad could have decent relationships with the other 2 children as well. It got to the point where that wasn't happening, and he remarried, moved out of state. My oldest one at that time started college, and then that's when I moved back to California. Uh, and because I wanted some family support with the other 2. The other 2, mm, it was about, they were like 9, and the youngest one was about 6. So my 9-year-old, my middle child, um, exhibited a lot of anger. And they both had a tendency of acting out after they got returned, from a visitation. My son's anger turned to illegal drug use at one point in time, and he dropped out of high school. And I had put him in rehab a couple of times. And as he got closer to 18, he relapsed again, and I had to kick him out of the house. Hardest thing I ever had to do,
Sure.
but the best thing I ever did.
Mm.
A couple months later, I get a call from him. He's down at the sheriff's department. I'm thinking, oh, dear God. And this is like 2 a.m. And so I go down there, and there was a situation where I think an attempted robbery. He and his roommate were held at gunpoint for a little bit, and scared him enough that and by this time it was like 4 a.m, and he came home with me for that night. And I said, okay, you can sleep on the couch, but the next morning I'm taking you, back to another place, because you're not staying here. I go out the next morning, I go out, see him on the patio, and I go out to say, hey, ready to go? And he starts sobbing,
Mm.
uncontrollable sobbing. And I said, what's going on? And he said, Mom, all of these years, I've been so angry with you when it should have been Dad. I said, I know. And that kind of took him by surprise. And he said, I really am thinking about going into the Army and, turning things around. And he did. He went back, got his high school, finished getting his high school diploma, enlisted in the Army, served 12 and a half years, including a year in Afghanistan, and I couldn't be more proud. My daughter kind of witnessed, like all of this. She had a tendency of being really clingy. She didn't want to really be out of my presence and stuff. She's pretty much outgrown that. She is married and with a child of her own now, so she's done really well. And then my oldest son struggled for many years. He's now early 40s, and with some weight issues, some other issues and stuff. There was a kind of an emergency situation a year ago last November, and I flew out. He was living in West Virginia, flew out there, got things under control, and he just recently, a few months ago, relocated and has moved in with me, and he's doing very, very well. Because he was the oldest, it just took the longest. And we've developed, even though we were alienated for many years, it was just through a lot of prayer, patience, and persistence with weekly phone calls that the relationship has turned around.
Nice.
So it's been a challenge. There's no ifs, ands, or buts
Sure.
about that. But and I think I probably skirted every statistic out there. But it again, prayer and persistence. Stay the
Well,
course.
here's a statistics I want to make sure to address. You're a best-selling author. So your story is out there. People have obviously responded. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience of being a bestseller?
Again, never on my bucket list. And I kind of want to share a story that happened to me when I was, I think, a junior in high school. One of the teachers, told me I couldn't write, I couldn't do anything, and told my dad at one of the parent teacher conferences that, oh, she'll never get past C in this class. Well, not only did I end up with an A, but now I'm a best-selling author, and I feel like telling Sister Patricia, hey, I did it.
Good for
I
you.
look what I did. So
Sure.
thank you for lighting that fire.
Yeah.
Because you never know, and teachers and stuff play so much of an important role in our development and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Sister Patricia. But yes, it's exhilarating, to know that I've accomplished that. Again, writing a book was never on my bucket list, but now that I've done it, become a best-selling author, and have been part of other collaborations with writing, it's kind of like I've gotten the writing bug, and I can't shut up.
Well, we want you to keep at it because, yes. So, what are the subsequent projects? Because not just one, but now several since the original one. What else have you done?
I have collaborated in 2 of the Mission Hope series books. Shar Murphy's been the one who's compiled them. It's just providing hope and inspiration by people, 20 authors in each book, sharing their stories and how they overcame whatever adversity and challenges they are. So it's very, very beneficial. I also was part of a 365-day devotional, again, where because I am very spiritual, uh, have finding that hope in scripture, and how, scripture can resonate with us to get us through those challenges. So then that's been, that was a good project to be involved with. And then I did a subsequent book called Open Up, and it's really more of a guide to help women think about things that they might not think about as they're trying to leave these situations. Like, for example, insurance. What insurance do I need? Why do I need it? Just things that I didn't know. I didn't have any guide. 25 years ago when I left, they didn't have the resources and stuff out there now that's available, which is good, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Sure. And could you tell us a little bit about your work? Because you're, I would say, an activist in some ways, but in a good way and a positive way. So, what other activities and activism are you a part of?
I try to be involved with my local governments. Every October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I try to work with them to proclaim whatever city or county I'm living in to honor that, to proclaim that month, and dedicate it to that. I have a website that not only has the books and stuff I've been involved with, but also resources, not just the National Domestic Violence Awareness Hotline information, but check with your local county, city resources. Um, I have a list of some resources and stuff on there. And then, I write, I blog. I have a blog every week that I try to use it as educating on these red flags and subtleties. And, recently I had 2 articles just on the holiday time, what to to be aware of family members that may be in situations, and might not be aware of it. So just keep your eyes open.
So, well, I'm a big fan of yours, which you know. So I'm curious now. Please tell everybody else a website and where you're writing and where they can find you and the other books that you have written in addition to the original one.
Okay. Most of all of that can be found on my website at www.broken2boldness.com. And that's TO, not the number two. That has the books, that has my blogs. You can find my information, also blogs on Medium and Substack. I'm on those platforms. I'm on social media, almost every social media outlet out there. So I'm out there. The books are also available on Amazon as well.
Outstanding. So you've got all these accomplishments so far. What's next? What else are you working on? Where we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Well, that's a great question. I'm actually in the process of doing a little bit of rebranding, where I want to start creating communities for people to come together and talk about their experiences and possibly getting into some coaching. So, it's really important for me to empower other women to open up and rebuild their lives, because they may not be able to see it when you're rock bottom coming out of these situations, but it can be done. And, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And the good thing is there's a lot more resources now out there and people who are willing to help. So just reach out.
And if it takes 7 times for someone to leave, that means it's obviously not an easy process first to recognize what is happening, to listen to others who are telling you something is wrong, or your own internal mechanism, which says, I don't feel right and I don't quite know why. And it's a very arduous process to get out of a situation, especially when you're saying there's financial considerations, children
Mhm.
involved, and time. That when you've been with someone for so long, you think sometimes, well, I'll just stick it out. I'll do the best I can. And rather than just surviving, I think your story is thriving and
Yes.
not just surviving. And I
Right.
think that's really, really important for people to know.
Right.
Life can be better.
Absolutely. And I truly believe we're all here for a reason, and we all have a purpose, and life happens for us, not just to us. So while I've had these experiences, I don't regret it, because it's led me to this point, and I've learned from them and I've grown from them. And that's really what life is about. What can we learn and take away and really help others to learn?
It's a amazing and terrific attitude to have. So yes, I don't think we're here at random, and I don't think there are coincidences either. That there is no such thing as a coincidence. It's supposed to happen, and I agree with you. Every experience, it's the famous phrase that that which does not kill me helps me grow, and you can learn from all these experiences, even the worst of them.
Mhm.
So once again, people want to reach out to you. How do they get a hold of you? And make sure that they can, because you're an invaluable resource.
Sure. My website is www.brokentoboldness.com. And my email address is Deborah@brokentoboldness.com.
And that hotline again, you say, to make sure people get that.
Absolutely. The National Domestic Violence Awareness Hotline. And that number is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's SAFE.
Well, Debbie, I can't thank you enough for the time and the blessings that you have shared with me on other occasions and previously. But thank you very much for taking some time out for this really important issue and also important work that you're doing. So please keep the faith. You're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and good luck to you with your endeavors.
Thank you so much. So, if you've enjoyed this and other people who are doing things and good things, I hope so, because well, that's what we try to do, and we try to help other people as well. I want to thank those supporters of who I've had previously as well, and that's the publishers of both Burning America and On Track E&I are both of those available on Amazon, of course. And if you want to reach out to me, I like Debbie to say I'm easy to find. If you can't find me, you're not looking. So I'm the Idea to Author coach, and I can help you on Facebook as well, a private Facebook group. If you are a writer, what I do is I help writers. I want to get them going, I want them to be best-selling authors as well. So until the next time, this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital, signing off. And hopefully we'll reach out and touch base again at another